Welcome to This Explainer. You know, putting proficient at ChatGPT on your resume right now, it's basically like bragging that you know how to use Microsoft Word. It's not a differentiator anymore. It is the absolute bare minimum baseline. Just ping-ponging facts with a chatbot isn't going to cut it. So today, we're looking at what actually comes next. We're going to dive into exactly why you need to upgrade your approach, and we'll unpack 4 specific, critical skills you have to build on top of that baseline to actually survive and thrive in this AI revolution.
Here's the agenda for our survival masterclass today. We're going to cover the cockpit rule, building the rails, storytelling mode, manual override, and finally, the verdict.
Let's jump right into number 1, the cockpit rule. This is all about knowing when to delegate, when to collaborate, and when to just avoid AI altogether. We're kicking things off with a mental model that will fundamentally change how you look at your daily task list. I want you to treat your AI use exactly like a pilot sitting in a cockpit. Look, just like flying a plane, you need to know what mode you're in. You've got to know when it's a clear day and you can just engage autopilot, when things are a bit tricky, like takeoff and you need to collaborate as a co-pilot, and when it's a high-stakes emergency where you just have to grab the yoke and take full manual control. So how do you decide? Well, Wharton professor Ethan Mollick has this brilliant agentic cost-benefit framework that actually breaks this down mathematically. It looks at 3 distinct things. First, your human baseline time, like how long does this take you to do manually? Second, the AI's success probability. What are the odds the bot actually gets it right? And third, the AI process time. How long is it going to take you to prompt it, tweak it, and verify the output? So if a task takes you forever, but the AI is highly likely to nail it and it's super fast to check, boom, that is pure autopilot. Let's ground this in reality, right? Imagine you're staring at a massive, messy spreadsheet. Doing that manually might eat up 2 hours of your day, but AI is great at data formatting, and it takes maybe 15 minutes to prompt and verify. Textbook autopilot. Okay, but what about drafting a nuanced pitch deck for a new client? The AI doesn't know the client's specific quirks or risk tolerance. That's going to require a lot of back and forth iteration. That right there is collaboration mode. And finally, we've all been there. What if your VP shoots you a highly emotional, kind of angry Slack message at 4:55 p.m. on a Friday? Trying to explain all that nuanced office politics to an AI would easily take 30 minutes, whereas manually typing a quick, thoughtful reply takes 3. That is strictly manual mode. Moving on to number 2, build the rails. This is about designing your process so the AI does the actual heavy lifting. Listen, once you're figured out when to use AI, your competitive advantage totally shifts. It's no longer about doing the work itself, it's about laying down the tracks up front, like building a real network for a bullet train, so the AI can just glide right over them. Take tech pioneer Andrew Ng, for example. He saw his coding success rate with AI shoot up from an honestly abysmal 48% to a massive 95%. How? Not with some magic prompt. He's simply designed a step-by-step track for the AI to write, run, and troubleshoot the code instead of just throwing a single generic prompt at it. There's a fascinating study from Harvard and BCG looking at over 700 consultants that illustrates this perfectly. They found that the top performers fell into 2 camps. They were either centaurs, who clearly divided specific tasks between human and machine, or cyborgs, who intricately integrated their workflow with AI. Both used structured systems and performed incredibly well. But the unstructured users? The study essentially calls them peons. These were folks who just threw tasks at the AI with 0 process, and they actually performed 19 percentage points worse than the baseline. Think about that. The AI didn't change, the process did. So, how do you actually lay these tracks? It's pretty straightforward. First, you take a recurring task, say a weekly analytics report, and you slice it into its component steps. Second, you apply that cockpit framework we just talked about to label each step. Is this an autopilot step, collaboration, or manual? And third, you prioritize redesigning the autopilot steps first. That is how you get the absolute biggest return on investment for the least amount of effort. All right, number 3, storytelling mode. This is where we turn commodity data into actual human meaning. Here is a somewhat harsh reality of the AI era. Information is now cheap. It is a total commodity. Honestly, if your entire job is just passing along data or reciting facts, you're entirely replaceable by a machine. But, and this is a big but, if you can take that raw data and weave it into a compelling story that actually moves people, you become absolutely irreplaceable. That's your ultimate safety net. And you don't have to wing this. You can lean on proven frameworks used by top-tier consulting firms. For instance, Randy Olson's ABT framework. And, but, therefore. You establish the baseline with and.
introduce a problem with but, and resolve it with therefore. Or there's McKinsey and BCG's SCQA, situation, complication, question, answer. Now, the absolute magic ingredient in both of these, they deliberately introduce a complication or conflict. That conflict is exactly what makes the human brain lean in and care.
Let's look at a side-by-side comparison. Version 1 is just facts. Frodo took the ring, walked to Mordor with some friends, and destroyed it. The end. I mean, yawn, right? But look at version 2. Frodo was the only one pure enough to carry the ring, but the horrific journey corrupted his mind. He failed right at the very end, and the entire quest was only saved by Gollum's desperate obsession. Literally the exact same information, but a wildly different impact. You just can't overstate the immense power of human storytelling over just regurgitating facts. Which brings us to number 4, manual override. This is all about intentionally protecting your critical thinking from atrophy. So, we've talked a lot about utilizing AI, but knowing when to intentionally turn it off is just as crucial. Think about it like wearing a weightlifting belt. The belt absolutely helps you lift heavier weights, for sure. But if you wear it for every single rep, every single day, your core stabilizer muscles are going to weaken. Give it a year and you'll literally only be strong when you're wearing the belt. The same thing happens to your brain. If you let AI write every email, outline every strategy, and summarize every single meeting, your cognitive stabilizer muscles are going to atrophy in the exact same way. And the science completely backs this up. Researchers at McGill University actually found physical brain changes in drivers who over-relied on GPS. They literally lost their innate ability to navigate. A joint study by Microsoft and Carnegie Mellon showed that knowledge workers who leaned too hard on AI stopped checking underlying assumptions, leaving them totally unprepared for unexpected edge cases. And get this, a massive study of radiologists found that doctors using AI as a first opinion started anchoring to the AI's errors and stopped double-checking for other signs. Blindly trusting this tech creates some incredibly dangerous mental blind spots. So how do we defend our brains? It comes down to Professor Malick's golden rule. Think first, prompt second. If you're tackling an analytical problem, just take a few minutes to form your own position, maybe jot down a quick SWOT analysis on a notepad before you ever even open ChatGPT. Step 2 of this defense is actively interrogating the AI's output. When it spits out an answer, do not just blindly accept it. Force a debate. Hit it with counter-arguments. Challenge it with what-if scenarios, like, okay, defend this mortgage strategy if interest rates suddenly spike by 2% next month. You have to force your brain to actively engage in a spar rather than just passively consuming whatever the bot feeds you. All right, we've reached number 5, the verdict. We have to ask, is AI actually making us dumber? It is so easy for skeptics to look at everything we just discussed and declare that AI is rotting our brains. But let's zoom out and look at history for a second. The philosopher Plato famously feared that the invention of written text would destroy human memory and wisdom. A few decades ago, people were genuinely terrified that cell phones would ruin our ability to memorize phone numbers. The crucial nuance that all those doom and gloom clickbait articles completely miss is that it's all about our habits. Look, giving a toddler unlimited iPad access is a bad idea, right? But the screen isn't the actual problem. The unguided behavior is. A recent World Bank study demonstrated this beautifully. They found that when used with structured guidance, AI acts like a super tutor, driving 2 full years of learning gains in just 6 weeks. But without that guidance, students actually scored worse. It is a powerful tool, not a crutch. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought from Ethan Malick. He points out that we rarely mourn the math we hand off to calculators, right? And truthfully, there is plenty of tedious, repetitive work today that is absolutely worth handing off to AI. Your innate human ability to think critically is totally safe from the machine. But as this tech accelerates, you really have to ask yourself, are you going to be the pilot, laying down the tracks and telling the human story? Or are you going to be just a passive passenger, letting your cognitive muscles slowly fade away? The choice is entirely up to you.